Hello and welcome back to Lab 52, a Dynasty football podcast. I'm one of your hosts, the Tecmo Weave, joined by my co-host Weapon X. And as always, this is not Dynasty advice. This is Dynasty Insight. This week, Weapon X, we're going to cover our final kind of Dynasty rankings for the season. If anybody's, maybe doing a late season startup, or you got to have a core when you're going into the season to adjust. You can't just be reactionary. How would you hope that this type of episode would help some of our listeners?
Yeah, I think, like you mentioned, if anyone's doing a startup, this obviously is a lot later than most startups would be. But if there is a startup going on, this could be beneficial. Just kind of going through the final dynasty rankings. We're essentially just going to cover the top 15 overall Superflex. So it's not going to get too in depth with sleepers or anything like that. Just kind of covering the top 15. So when you're entering maybe your first round or early second round, you kind of have this could kind of help, a good glimpse of what we're looking at here heading into the season. A lot of people already have done their drafts. Rankings are not going to change much from now till when games start taking place. So there's not a whole lot of change you're going to see, but it's still good to give it one more check here before the season starts.
I think that's wise. That's wise. Otherwise, you're just going to be kind of blowing in the breeze. So many years when I'll certainly get caught up in it, a good game by a player. And so many times when I look back on the season, I'm like, man, I'm glad that trade wasn't accepted. I remember after a few good games last year by Elic Eilmanner, I was like, oh, boy, he seems real promising. And thankfully, those trade offers got shot down, and I was thankful for that by the end of the season.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we're just going to kind of do the overall rankings. This is almost as if you were drafting in a startup. Just we're going to kind of go from pick one, and we'll just see how many picks we can get in.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
All right. Number one pick. Uh, I'll go first here. I mean, I've said it before. I don't think with Josh Allen's age, I can justify picking Josh Allen that early in a super flex. I just can't. Um, and I've seen people say, well, the alternative is you pick a difference maker. You pick Jahmyr Gibbs. You pick Bijan. Um, and I would tend to think I would kind of go with something like that because in general, I do find wide receiver value to be replaceable. Um, and Puka, with all the stuff that he's been doing off the field and getting into trouble and doing things that are controversial, um, I don't know. And then the idea of Matthew Stafford moving on at some point, because we have no idea how QB proof Puka Nakua is. Not that he's would be number one in really any startup, but I'm just trying to kind of go through my thought process. So it only leaves a handful of players left. I would say maybe Drake May, Jamar Chase, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, or the two running backs. I guess I couldn't fault anybody, and we're splitting hairs. Um, but when I think about players that are almost unattainable, um, and going into the season, maybe the number one player I would have on my board, I guess I'd say I'll go with Bijan. Bijan at number one. How do you like that to kick off a draft? I mean, I think when we're talking a spot or two, it's hard to fault things one way or another.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've seen Bijan go number one many times, especially as the offseason picked up and carried on. I've seen that happen more often than not. So no issue at all. Bijan being number one, you want to start your team with. If you look at Bijan Robinson, it's kind of like a Christian McCaffrey when he was younger. You're getting a Christian McCaffrey aged player. That type of talent at age 20. What is he? 24 right now. So you're getting a Christian McCaffrey talent at age 24, and if you have that type of level of production, if he stays healthy for 4 to 5 years, I mean, yeah, that's a good way to start your team. So yeah, Bijan Robinson, you're not going to go wrong there. And like you mentioned, there's different players that you can go at number one, and you're going to still feel real confident with it. I just think, yeah, you go Bijan, you're not hurting for production at all in any way.
And if you have to move him, he's not gonna be the type of player where someone's gonna say, "Well, I don't value that. I don't value that
Yeah,
type of player like you do." No, it's well known that you should be paying north of 3 first-round picks in value,
yeah,
potentially 4 because he's the number 1 guy.
100%. Yeah, and I think we touched on that last week with ATL. When it comes to trading a quarterback, when you're trading one away, you just might not get as much as you would for Bijan Robinson, and obviously it depends on what league you're in and everything. But Bijan, you're going to get a lot for him. So taking him number one, I don't really see much downside. I mean, the only downside is if he misses games. But we've talked about it how many times players miss games. You can't predict that. That's an unpredictable part of fantasy football. You take the talent, you take the production, and that's where it's at. So yeah, no issue at all with him being number one in any draft. My number two, which would be my number one, it's Jamar Chase for me. It's Jamar Chase for me because top five PPR wide receiver finish. He's been top five in PPR points 4 or 5 years in his NFL career. He's entering into age 26 season. The target share, he's a shoe in for 150, 160 plus targets from an elite quarterback. So the target share is there. He stays healthy. You're gonna get a guy that's top five and with number one overall number one overall wide receiver upside every single season. He's 26. So you think about, we always play this in a 2 to 3 year window. So there's no issue at all there with age. So for me, Jamar Chase is as safe a bet as it gets in fantasy football. If you don't want to go with a quarterback in the top two, I would absolutely go with Jamar Chase at number two.
Yeah, I mean, he is a difference maker. He's one of those players that can win you the week. That all of a sudden when he goes off and he has a 3 touchdown, 100 and some, yard game, um, and on, 8 to 10 catches, uh, yeah, that's gonna, help you cover for players that didn't, produce that week. As a side note here, as we've shared before that, we both do, rankings for Fantasy Pros, and as we're making our list here, we both in the past have ranked quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end for PPR Dynasty. And they have a formula that creates the overall ranking based on how you rank them. But it's not necessarily accurate. So as you and I are going through here, I'm adjusting my overall rankings to match the Lab 52 collaborative result that we're going to come up with. So we'll see how many players we can get through, but I like it so far. I like Bijan and Jamar. You can't fault those as number one and number two. I think I'm gonna be the first person to throw a curveball here at number three. It's Superflex, and this is tight end premium PPR dynasty. Um, I can't stress. I can't ignore the importance of quarterback. Give me Drake May. I've said it all before. I have it on my note here. Age, situation, production, and he gets you some rushing. Um, there's no one else more that you want at this point because Josh Allen, the rushing is going to dry up, and then you're left with question marks. I mean, imagine the situations were reversed just a little bit. Everybody's questioning Lamar Jackson. Oh, is he really that, is he really number 3? Is he really in that, elite tier of quarterbacks anymore? Well, we saw him kind of fall off. Well, maybe he doesn't have the legs he used to. When's that going to happen for Josh Allen? It just feels very short-sighted to pick him number 1. Drake May is the only option at number 1, so I would like him here at number 3 for our rankings.
Yeah, yeah, no issue there at all. Drake May, tremendous upside this year coming up here with AJ Brown entering the picture. I think there's a lot of upside here with Drake May. Very talented player, and it's just the situation's outstanding for him. So Drake May at 3, you're going to see him go in the top 6 to 7 of most startup drafts. So I think number 3 or number 4 is a good spot for him. And so we're gonna go to number 4 right now, and number 4 will be JSN. I'm gonna go JSN here. I think with JSN, a lot of people may be concerned about, maybe efficiency, taking a hit. He might not be as efficient this year. I'm looking at a guy that's entering age 24 season, back-to-back 100 catch seasons. He's coming off a 163 target year, and I don't think that target number will dissipate by any means. I think he's going to be pretty steady there with targets. I don't think you're going to see much of a drop there. He had 10 touchdowns last year. Yeah, obviously you can't predict double-digit touchdown seasons from players like JSN, but when you look at the way he's used, overall in the field, he's a guy that is going to be able to have that potential week in, week out to get touchdowns, to make long plays out there. He had a 15.1 yards per catch, which was an increase of about 4 yards year over year, 24 to 25. So that was really good to see. So I think JSN durable. He hasn't missed a game in his career, and Sam Darnold locks in on him, and he's been improving himself, and that's huge. So JSN at number 4, he's another one of those players that it's a safe pick. There's not a ton of downside. Maybe like I said earlier, the efficiency. People may be worried about that a little bit. But when you're picking this high in a draft, you shouldn't be too concerned with a guy like JSN.
Absolutely, yeah, no, that's exactly who I would have picked. I mean, he's had 2 seasons in a row at 100 or more catches, which is just dynamite for you in a PPR league. And he's 24 this season. So next year he's 25. There's no one else to truly compete with him for targets in Seattle. Um, and he has the draft pedigree. Took him 2 years before he blew up. So he's entering his 4th year. Yeah, no, this is a super safe pick. It may not feel very exciting, but you have a player you could build around. Um, I guess it is just a question, are we gonna see a number 1 season? I think if I had to guess, granted that's maybe not a fair bet, are you gonna be number 1 or are you gonna be something other than number 1 for the season? I don't think he'll probably match his numbers from last year. I think once the, coordinators, they got tape on him, everybody's wanting to beat the Seahawks this year. I maybe don't see it as explosive, but does he end up a top 5, top 3 wide receiver in the league? Absolutely. And this is a dynasty format that we're doing these rankings. This isn't necessarily who's going to be the number 1 scorer this year. It's just going to be who has the most longevity to produce at a high level. And JSN is as good of a bet as anyone.
Absolutely. And I had a quick question. For the Seattle Seahawks as a whole, if their running game is not as efficient and effective as they were last year, do you think that could catapult JSN to possibly being the 101 next year with a monster season? Because the target share could possibly increase if they're not able to run effectively.
I mean, he had 163 targets last year. It's going to be hard to get beyond that amount of targets. I guess yeah. I mean, you don't have Kenneth Walker anymore. That's not and you also don't really have an effective Charbonnet in there. You're giving it to a rookie and a bunch of backups. Um, yeah, I mean, how many more targets are you going to get? I mean, I don't know. I'd have to go research this, but I mean, if he's at 163 and he gets what? I mean, when did we last has a wide receiver ever had more than 200 targets in a season? I
No,
don't know.
I
I
don't think
mean,
so. I look at for comparison, we were just talking about Jamar Chase, 175 targets, 2024, and 185 in 2025. So, I
okay,
mean, yeah, so
you
that's
get
just a
close.
comparison. Yeah, that's a comparison. Obviously, it's a different offense, a different situation. Pace of play, all that's different. The Bengals defense is nowhere near as good as Seattle, so you have to put all those things in the context too.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, as I said, my easy bet is no, he does not end the season as the wide receiver 1. I just think there's going to be more tape. They're going to be game planning for him more. Everyone wants to beat the Seahawks just because, that's who you're number 1. Everybody's gunning for you. And what they did to scheme him open, there's going to be answers for that. The NFL is reactionary, and teams adjust because jobs are on the line. So, but is he, as I said, is he going to be a top 3, top 5 player? Absolutely. And I think it's a safe investment. So moving on though to number 5, I referenced him a little bit earlier. I'm going to go with Jahmyr Gibbs here. This season seems to be the return of the running back popularity. Everybody said, "Hey, you know, running backs weren't in vogue for a while," but the reality is they've always been in vogue. It's just a question of prediction, that can you predict, and the length of their career. If you've had a top producing running back, they've always been near the top or at the top or the very top of the scoring for your format. Because they're getting rushing yards and they're getting receiving yards. They're getting goal line carries. It's just hard for other positions to compete. So Jahmyr Gibbs, he'd be my pick here at number 5 because he's not a whole lot away. I mean, do you put Bijan and Gibbs, are they right next to each other, or it's clear that Bijan, to me it's clear that Bijan is some amount, he's worth some amount more than Gibbs, but it can't be a whole lot. But if somebody wanted to trade me straight up Gibbs for Bijan, I wouldn't do it. What would you need if you had Bijan and somebody wanted to give you Gibbs? What's the bridging piece?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know how many times we've seen that this offseason because I know people are usually trying to pair Bijan with Gibbs or vice versa. You know, we're talking about the number 1 and number 2. This is tier 1. This tier 1 in fantasy dynasty football for running backs is Gibbs and Bijan. That's the tier. Some people do have Gibbs ahead of them, but most people, I would say, would have Bijan ahead of Gibbs. But that is the first tier. So you're not really having to. You shouldn't have to give a whole lot more on top to get the Bijan. So it's not a pivot that makes much sense really, because either way,
Oh,
you're just gonna
I'm
have a
not
star running
I'm
back.
not saying it makes sense. I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah,
saying it makes sense. It's just when I thought of it, if somebody offered that to me and I know that they're both next to each other in the rankings,
yeah.
I'm not sure what I need to move off of that, because like a 4th round pick isn't going to change your mind.
Yeah, I would say a second. I would say a second is what it would
Okay.
take to make you want to make. Say if you have Bijan and you're being offered Gibbs, if they
Yeah, you got
threw in
to
a
make it
second,
worth it.
yeah. If they threw in a second, yeah, I think that gets it done. Just because they're so close, but Bijan is valued higher. I think a second rounder would probably get it done, and it would be a fair offer. I think.
Definitely. But yeah, offense is nothing has changed with the offense. Got David Montgomery out of town. Isaiah Pacheco. I've already mentioned his name more than once. So if you haven't picked him up already, it's too late. The cat's out of the bag. We'll see how much he resembles David Montgomery's role to some degree,
Yeah,
because Gibbs can't get all the carries. But I'll
yeah.
pass it over to you for number 6, unless you wanted to talk more about
Yeah,
Jahmyr Gibbs.
just quick touch on. We've all seen the numbers. I mean, the production that Gibbs puts together year after year. 3 years in the league, he's been double-digit touchdowns each year. He's averaged over 5 yards a carry each year, and he's had at least 50 receptions each year. So that floor you're getting from from Jahmyr Gibbs, and we all know the upside he has. So I think when you're heading into a redraft coming up in a couple weeks for some people, you're going to see him go 101 in many leagues, just because for this specific season the situation obviously is better than Bijan Robinson's situation, quarterback wise, overall offense as a whole. So I think you're going to see that happen quite a bit, just because you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong with a guy that's being used that much in the offense. So number 5, we are now at number 6, correct?
That's right.
Yeah. So we are number 6. I will go with the second quarterback here. I'll go with Josh Allen. We've talked about him many times. There's not much else that we have to say. You know, Josh Allen, yeah, he's older than Drake May, so that's why maybe that's the difference, the differentiator for picking Drake May over Josh Allen. But Josh Allen is about as sure bet at the quarterback position as you're going to ever find. He's been one of the most productive quarterbacks in fantasy football. I mean, I could safely say in fantasy football history, he's been one of the most productive year after year. He's always going to finish at the top of the position. Yeah, the rushing, obviously, as you look 2 to 3 years, down the road, will it start to diminish? We don't know. We'll see. He's a bigger quarterback, so obviously he may be able to continue that on a little longer than some. But yeah, the touchdown production he puts through the air and on the ground, the offense, the scheme, bringing in DJ Moore is going to help him out. He's got a great running back in James Cook to take pressure off him. Situations is as good as it gets, and Josh Allen, you could build your team around him, and yeah, at number 6, I have no issue there.
Yeah, I'm looking at his rushing touchdown numbers here. I mean, it's just insane. Last since 2023, 15, 12, 14. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, that's better than most running backs in the league when you're putting up that many rushing touchdowns. But prior to that, it hadn't been at that number. I mean, it had been at, his rookie year, 8, 9, 8, 6, and 7.
yeah,
Um, I would imagine, touchdowns are a little bit different because it's what's happening at the goal line. Um, I don't know. The father time comes for everybody. And
yeah.
at 30 years old, when you got your franchise online, do you really want him playing this way? I guess you can't fault the results. Uh, but then again, maybe they do need an offensive shift. It's not like they're ending up in the Super Bowl. They're not bringing home championships. They're helping out fantasy teams. Um, but I guess that's all we're covering right now. So I don't know. I'd rather be out at this early. I don't know if I mean, I think for value's sake in a super flex, yeah, no, I don't think there's anything wrong with the guy that in most drafts, from what I've seen in startups this year, is always going 1-1,
Yeah.
and we put him at 1-6. I think that makes sense. But if you do buy into the fact that maybe this is, you'd rather be out a year early than a year late, is there a different asset that you would want more? That's a question that can be different for every owner. But if history repeats itself, no, then you can say, well, Tecmo, you were wrong. He led the league in scoring again, or he's a top 3 guy. And I got a value here at pick 6.
Yeah, and when you're at this point of the draft, it really depends on how you want to build your team. If you're someone who likes to take the elite quarterback, you're going Josh Allen with this pick. If he's there, that's not even a question. If you're someone that is okay waiting, a little bit on quarterback, then there's going to be some other options you're gonna go with here that we're gonna talk about pretty shortly.
Yeah. Well, at number 7, I'm going to go with the guy I mentioned a little bit earlier, kind of zany, wacky player. His quarterback is a time bomb. Never know when that last hit is going to happen, or um, what makes him decide to leave. But yeah, I think I have to go with Puka Nakua simply just due to, and I mean, I hate to say it, but a lot of value is based in the narrative. It's based on what people think. And Puka does back it up with his numbers, but he's also known to be an elite wide receiver on an elite offense. So until those factors disappear, he remains I would say he almost becomes kind of the last of the big name wide receivers in this first round. If you want to build around wide receivers, when you start to pick Amon-Ra St. Brown, or you pick Tech McMillan, or you pick Drake London, they haven't reached, they're either aging out where we don't feel comfortable with it, or they haven't reached that ceiling. It feels like Puka is right there, but his stock is volatile only based on quarterback uncertainty and some of his off the field antics. And I just wonder, like, how long can he continue to produce this way? I mean, 129 catches last year, 1,700 yards, 10 touchdowns, 166 targets. Um, and you got basically the same target competition you had last year. There's no difference. Devontae Adams got a year older. That's it. Um, so here at number 7, I'll take Puka.
Yeah, that's who I would have went. I had Puka overall number 5, so yeah, that's the way you go there. Um, it's just like you mentioned, the offense. He's got the talent, he's got the offense, he's got the role. The way they move him around the line of scrimmage, he's able to get that head start right away. He's able to get route running. His route running is incredible. He uses his body well. He's quick. Um, and he can get by defenders. It's just the way he moves on the field. He's a really good football player. Nobody questions his effort on the field. He's always putting in full effort. So yeah, like you said, 1,700 yards last year, 16 games. I think with Puka Nacua, it's just going to come down to what happens, after 2 years from now when Stafford, if he does decide to retire, how will that offense look at that time? But right now, we're looking at the next couple years pretty much set in with Stafford at quarterback, and nothing's really going to change situation wise. Like you said, Devontae Adams on the team, he's getting a year older. The role is there, and I think, yeah, you pick him here, you're locked in for a receiver who's going to possibly finish number 1 overall. You can do that. You can definitely do that. And week to week, he's a guy just like Chase, just like JSN, guys like that. He can win you a week because of the target share and the opportunity you can have in that offense. So we are at number 8, correct?
That's correct.
I keep messing up here. Okay, we are number 8.
That's okay.
We are number 8, and I'm going to go with. Ooh, it's a tough one. I'm between a receiver and a quarterback here, but I'll go with what I have in my rankings. I do have Lamar Jackson ahead. So Lamar Jackson at number 8 overall here. That's actually where I have him in my rankings, number 8 overall. I think when you look at Lamar Jackson, 29 right now, he is a quarterback that any given year he could finish at the top of the position. Obviously, we just talked about with Josh Allen, the running ability. When that starts to fade, obviously his overall upside is going to start to it's not going to be there, But until then, no issue. I think his passing has improved so much throughout the years. You got to give him credit. Early in the year, that was early on in his career, it was a huge question whether or not he could develop into a really good passer, and he has. He really has. He's still one of the most special talents that we've ever really seen at the quarterback position. And I think dynasty managers should remain confident that they have an elite quarterback that you could build your team around. And at this point, the first round, getting closer to the end, if you are looking for your quarterback, I think Lamar Jackson, that's who I would go with. I know Jaden Daniels is neck and neck with him in most rankings. But I think Lamar, weekly upside and just a guy that if he stays healthy and the offense is rolling, with the new coaching staff, I think it's a good situation for him. And I think, I think he's a guy that I would feel really, really confident with, first round pick.
Yeah, I'm certainly comfortable with that. I mean, I would have had a different player, but that's fine for our rankings. Well, I have no problem taking Lamar here because you don't want to be on the outside looking in, at least in my opinion, when it comes to Superflex quarterbacks because they're hard to acquire. And if you like players, you're not going to be gambling on, well, I hope they take the next step. Granted, us and the rest of the dynasty or fantasy community, everybody's excited for somebody like Omarion Hampton, right? We can kind of see what's coming. We can read the forecast, but it's not like he's been elite yet. We're hoping he's going to be elite. Um, Lamar Jackson, 2-time NFL MVP, and he was injured last year. To pick somebody like Jaden Daniels over Lamar Jackson, well, who was also hurt last year, and, and he hasn't been the MVP. And Lamar is only 29 years old. He's not Matthew Stafford. He's not on his way out of the league. Yeah, no, I don't think he's forgotten how to play football. How much the offense changes with a new head coach, I guess we'll have to wait and see. But no, you're absolutely correct. I mean, his MVP season in 2024, I mean, he had over 4,000 yards passing, 41 passing touchdowns to 4 INTs, and nearly 1,000 yards rushing. He had a 915. Um, I don't think that just dries up in the matter of 2 years. when it wasn't that he had some sort of catastrophic injury last year and he didn't play all year. It wasn't like Malik Neighbors or Tyreek Hill, where you're wondering, like, did they lose their ability to play? Um, yeah, no, he could be a massive value in a lot of leagues. And if you prefer the players that have demonstrated elite ability, then there's no question you go with Lamar Jackson right here. So my next pick here at number 9, when I start to look at the players we have here, it feels like it's people with question marks. It's people in a sense of, are they going to take the next step? Or do they justify the ranking? And this is tight end premium. I'm going to take Brock Bowers here because the position is so shallow when it comes to elite production, that Brock Bowers gives you. He's the number one guy until proven otherwise. Is it going to be Colston Loveland this year? Is it somehow going to be Tyler Warren? I don't know, but I'd like to bet on the guy that had the tight end one season as a rookie, and there's literally next to no other receiving options on the team other than him. And when the elite production pretty much drops off after the top 4 players, if you want to argue maybe number 5, I think you got to take the elite asset when there's still elite assets on the board, because otherwise you're picking some lower tier asset, and this is where the best value would be. So I'm good with Brock Bowers here at number 9.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The tight end premium, you're usually going to see one of the tight ends go in the first round and around this time too. So him at number 9, yeah, I think that's totally fine. Like you said, he's already had a number 1 overall tight end season. Situation this year figures to improve. With a really good offensive mind, a head coach. Kirk Cousins starting the season, most likely, that's still a good thing. And, Kirk Cousins is going to still be able to provide some production for his tight end. Obviously, the receivers are not the strongest, heading into the season. So Brock Bowers is the clear cut number 1 target by a wide margin on that team. So you figure the rushing game improves. It's only going to help out Brock Bowers and his opportunity share. So when Fernando Mendoza does take over at some point this season, I don't really expect to see much of a drop off. If anything, it can improve. Yeah, I think Brock Bowers at number 9. Yeah, very really really strong pick there. Number 10, I'm gonna go with a guy we talked about a few times this year. One of the most consistent receivers in all of Dynasty the last 4 years. This is a player that when you pick Amon-Ra St. Brown here, number 10, when you pick him here, this is one of the guys you feel the most comfortable with in the first round. One of those players that, obviously outside of the top 2 or 3 picks, you're going to feel comfortable with them. You should probably trade out of it if you're not comfortable with one of your top 2 or 3 overall picks. But at number 10, Amon-Ra St. Brown, you just look at his numbers. The 4 straight years, clearing 1,000 yards. He's had no less than 1,161 yards in those 4 years. He's had 3 straight years of double-digit touchdowns. The target share is always high, 164 in 2023, and then 141 and 172. Receptions over 104 straight years. This is just as consistent as productive a guy, and well noted that he's out there and he plays almost every single game. He's only had 2 seasons where he played 16, and I'm not sure offhand. I'm not sure if those were situations where week 7, the last game, didn't matter. I'm not quite sure, but it's well documented, very durable, and he's just one of them players that you could just put in your lineup, and you're going to just get that. You're just going to get the floor, the steady floor, and also the upside of a potential top 5 week.
Yeah, it's the idea. We've said it a million times. You don't get an award for the youngest team, the best looking on paper team, and there's nothing wrong with Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's a win now asset. This isn't about what's he going to be doing in 5 years. No, he's locked in based on his career so far for the Hall of Fame without a question. This is I would say, not a sexy pick. It's a pick you can feel confident in, and you have to be realistic that, okay, when you're picking 10th, in your draft, well, you're not going to get the players that are available in the top 3 or 4 spots. That's life. That's why people trade up, because they maybe prefer those players more. And that's a trade-off in your draft, to be drafting at a different position. But to have the consolation prize be Amon-Ra St. Brown, you're putting a cornerstone of your team, certainly out of the gate, as a win now asset. But we've also talked about, too, the downside is the not necessarily the production cliff, but the value cliff. He does turn 27 this year, and we kind of know what happens when you hit that age. You know, you can have another elite season, but it becomes harder and harder to justify the value in a startup, because it just doesn't continue forever. But I like it at number 10. I don't think, I mean, there could be arguments maybe made for different players, but I think this is a solid one.
Yeah, and I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is a type of player. When you're picking the first round of a startup, ideally these are the players that you're essentially going to build your roster around. Amon-Ra St. Brown, yeah, he may not have the trade value next year and the following year as he does now, but if you are going to ride out the rest of his career, you're still going to get that production at the receiver position that you need to win. And so you could build your roster around him and just add values throughout the draft. When you get a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown, you're not going to get a guy who's going to increase in value in the next couple of years, but you're going to get a guy that's still going to be very steady in production given health. I think he's just the guy that, if he stays healthy, he's going to continue to produce for you for a 2 to 3 year window. And I think that's a type of player that you feel, like you said, Tecmo, you feel comfortable selecting in the first round.
Yeah, I'd feel comfortable. I'd feel disappointed I wouldn't get one of the more exciting players. I wouldn't get JSN or Gibbs or Drake May, but I just have to look at it and say, well, that's how the draft randomizer works. You'll get a better player in the second round and have in your team for the next 4 or 5 years with Amon-Ra St. Brown. If you tend to keep your players, you're locked into a Hall of Famer. That tends to be a good player to have on your team.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, number 11 here, I'm going back to the same kind of attitude that I had with picking Brock Bowers. I want to pick players that, well, I guess maybe this player hasn't shown to have an elite ceiling. It's about the narrative, the draft pedigree. And if already we have, 2 running backs off the board, it's the return of the running back, that song, The Return of the Mac. You remember that song from the 90s? It's the return of the running back. I'm sure somebody's mocked that up somewhere. And yeah, I'm going to go with Jeremiah Love here. Jeremiah Love, and you've taken him in a startup, and maybe I'll kick it over to you with some of you picked him pretty early. I don't think you picked him at this position, but it was within a couple of picks. If you wait much longer, he's going to be gone. And when offenses are involving, running backs, certainly in high value roles, granted, maybe out of the gate, that's the one knock on him. He's in Arizona. That's not looking like a great offense. To expect a top 5 finish to the year, that isn't going to happen. But his analytics, all of that he is showing to be an elite prospect. And I'd swing for the fences here. You could go and pick Justin Jefferson. Yeah, you could pick, somebody else. You could pick Drake London. You could pick Ashton Janty. I wouldn't fault somebody if they wanted to swap Love with Janty. I just think having the shiny new toy is that gives the just the one additional hair on the scale that puts it in Jeremiah Love's favor. Everybody likes what's new. And Janty's offensive role and the role in the offense in Las Vegas this year doesn't look like it's a whole lot improved. And I mean, I can only imagine he's going to see more stacked lines again. And that's hard. I mean, what do you expect him to do? So I'm going to give the edge to Jeremiah Love here. And at number 11, Give me the player that at least has the community hype going at a position the community is more in love with now than they have been in recent times.
Yeah. Genty and Love, I think are interchangeable in these rankings. I think it's okay to go either way. So you mentioned the startup draft. I had the 12th pick, and I just went Genty and Love back to back. So, and that's exactly where I have them in my rankings, back to back, 12 and 13. So Jeremiah Love at number 11, no issue at all. You mentioned all the reasons why, and his value right now, being a rookie, the 101 in the draft. Uh, this is a guy that you have him on your team. The value is already high, and if he comes out here with a strong rookie year, you're talking about a guy that's going to enter into the middle of the first round of startups next year. So an increase in value. So Jeremiah Love at number 11. That's a good pick. That's a good pick. It's a really strong pick because he's a guy that can increase in value year over year, and I think that's huge. So for me, at number 12, we're at number 12 now. Man, I I guess I'm gonna have to do it. I am gonna pick Malik Neighbors, number 12, because I do have him a couple spots ahead of Genty. So Malik Neighbors will be my pick here, number 12. Yeah, this is a tough one for anyone entering into 2026. You can't really expect him to have a monster season this year, but this is Dynasty, and we're talking about a guy who has already showed that elite ceiling. And if he just comes out here, whenever he is able to get onto the field, if he is able to show that he's still that same guy, I think he'll enter next offseason in the discussion to be a top 5 overall pick in Dynasty. So you have a guy, Malik Neighbors, who is an absolutely special talent. And if he can just at some point this year, whenever it may be, if he can put together some good numbers, his value he's not going to lose his value. He's going to gain in value, and he's a guy that you could build your wide receiver core around. We've seen it already what he can do. I would love to see him play with Jackson Dart a little bit here this year and get some rapport with him because I think that's very important for the next couple of years. But I don't think Malik Neighbors can leave the first round. In my opinion, I've seen it happen. we were in a draft not too long ago. We were in a draft not too long ago where he actually almost got out of the second round, which was really, really surprising. But for me, I would not let him leave the first round. I think he's just too good of a talent. And we're playing Dynasty right now, and he's still a guy that you want to have on your team. And I think outside of maybe the running backs we were just mentioning, Genty and Love, I don't know who has as much value as of him entering this year. And if they all have a good season, they're all going to be in the discussion as far as first round startup picks next year. So I think Malik Neighbors would be the guy, number 12.
Yeah, it's and we've covered him before. I think it is the smart pick. It's just not a I mean, it's a smart pick in one way, and another way it maybe doesn't feel that smart. It's all a question of how much time he's going to miss. That if somehow and I get it. Right now they're saying, "Oh, he might play week 1." Well, coaches say a lot of things. And if all of a sudden he misses 3 games, he misses 4 games, and then he's just not himself for this year. Granted that now it becomes the buy window. I would imagine is the buy window open or closed? I mean, oftentimes it's what have you done for me lately? And if he comes back and has a poor season, the community, right or wrong, is going to blame him, just like they did with Xavier Worthy. I mean, maybe Malik Neighbors gets a bit more grace because of his dominant rookie year. Um, but it'll still be the same questions. Well, has he really recovered? Well, how long does it take to recover from that injury? Did something change? Um, but no, I can't fault it here because he's just such an elite asset. There's so few players that come out their rookie years and earn 170 targets. That's just unheard of. And produce at that level that, those are typically Hall of Fame players. Um, so if you're able to, once again, if you're able to weather the storm, and the idea that he might not pay off at his elite ceiling this year or the first half of the year, um, then it's a no-brainer. You're getting him at a few spots later than he should be going.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
And maybe he does come back. He does, he comes back week 1 and they got him on a pitch count, and by week 5 he's 85% of what he is, and that's Pro Bowl caliber.
Yeah, yeah. I think with Neighbors, you have to be willing to do two things when you're on the clock and he's there. You have to be willing to accept that you may not get elite production right away this year. You have to be willing to accept that, but you also have to be willing to accept if you do pass on him that you might not have a chance to trade for him next year if he has a good season. The amount you'll have to give up for him it's just not going to be able to happen. So you have to. Those are two things you have to weigh when you're on the clock. I tend to lean towards just take the elite talent that we've seen already put up massive numbers. Just that's where I lean. Just take the guy. Just take him, because if he's able to get back on the field, obviously early in the season would be awesome. But if he's able to get back on the field at all and show that he's still that same guy, he's 23 years old right now. This is a guy that's gonna. He's 23, and he's talent level. It's a Jamar Chase type talent. We've seen it already. So yeah, you got to take him if he's there at this point of a first round startup. I just think you have to take him. I think there's too much value to be had in a guy like this, and you're not going to be able to trade for him. I mean, you can trade for him, but you're going to have to send a haul to try to get him next year when you could just take him right now.
Yeah, I think if you look yourself in the mirror and you say, "Am I a patient person?" If you are, well, then absolutely take him.
Yeah,
He's an elite talent. If you are not a patient person, then he's not the one to take, because his value it's not necessarily going to pay off potentially right away. So you have to go into it saying, "Hey, I'm a patient person," because if you're not, you're going to end up selling him when things don't they're not going how you want them to go, and then you're just going to be selling Malik Neighbors at a discount.
yeah,
So
that's a
I
good
think that's
point.
a question each owner can ask themselves. Am I a
That is,
patient person?
yeah, that is a good point about patience. Yeah, if you're not a patient person, then just go with Ashton Genty. Then at this point, get the guy that starting week 1 productions.
Mhm.
That's what you do. If you're not a patient person, you still get an elite talent at running back, and you're fine either way. So yeah, that is a good point you made there.
Yeah, well, you mind read my next pick, and that's okay because we want to get through certainly what we can here in the next 13 minutes, and I don't think we have to rehash a whole lot of Ashton Janty because in your draft and your startup, you took them back to back, and there's I'm sure that's been a popular move. I would imagine a lot of other startups, and I have him here at number 13 for the same reasons. Jeremiah Love, we had him at number 11, young, draft capital, all of that situation, workhorse, generational product, young running back in the league with the current offenses and fantasy. And in our draft here, now we've had 4 go in the first 13 picks. So they go fast. They go fast, and if you miss out, then all of a sudden you're hoping one of the second tier guys can pick up the slack for you, and that might be a strategy that's a bit outdated. The no running back strategy that was a big deal a few years ago. But I won't spend any more time on Aston Janty. I think the positives and negatives. His offensive output this year, he's going to face a lot of the same hurdles Jeremiah Love does.
Absolutely, yeah,
It's
yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, I love him here at number 13. I still feel like I would be getting a valuable asset that people want where I'm swinging for the fences. Um, and his role is locked in. And at 13, you take a running back or you can be left out in the cold. Up to you. So
Yeah.
who do you got at 14?
Yeah, 14, I got Jaden Daniels. Got Jaden Daniels at 14. This will be the 4th quarterback for us. The elite ceiling he showed in year 1, obviously last year was an injury-riddled year. I think it's similar to Neighbors. You just bet on the talent. You bet on the talent who's got a good situation. Bet on the guy who was heading into last year as one of the biggest names entering the season. Unfortunately, he suffered that terrible injury and just wasn't able to really put together any games after that. But yeah, I would go with Jaden Daniels here. And at this point of a draft, when you're entering early second round and you have this type of player available, this type of quarterback, they're gonna go quick. especially if we're talking about teams that did not take quarterbacks in the first round. This is where Jaden Daniels and maybe we'll talk about Caleb Williams at some point. That's where the guys like that are going to start going. So Jaden Daniels here at number 14, I think I would feel pretty good about getting him here.
Yeah, no, that's I think that's good, and I kind of had forgotten about Caleb Williams. Maybe it's because I don't own him anywhere, or because I'm a Packers fan, I don't want to think about him at all. In most of the handful of startups I did this year, he went a lot earlier than I would have predicted that he would have went. But yeah, no, a for a guy that was in all the startups I did, he was always going in the first round. Jaden Daniels, to get him here early in the second, um, to me that feels like a no brainer, and it really kind of made me question pick number 15. Um, yeah, at this point, do you pivot and say, okay, I mean, I definitely think you have to focus on it depends who you got in the first round. Because you're right, the quarterbacks are going to start going fast, but the question is, who are the truly elite players? Um, and I'm not sure if I feel like Caleb Williams is, he certainly can come up in a few picks, but I'm not sure I would feel comfortable putting him at number 15. Um, I think I'm going to go with a safe player at number 15. Player that tends to go at the end of the second round, so I'm going to put him near the start of the second round, and with Drake London at number 15. Um, he doesn't. I guess he's only had one sort of close to elite season in 2024 when he had 100 receptions, 12, almost 1,300 yards, 9 touchdowns, 160 targets, and he's got Tua and Penix throwing him the ball this year. So that becomes kind of the question mark downside. But when it feels like a guy that, if we think that Amon-Ra St. Brown is a boring but safe pick, granted he's had Hall of Fame numbers, maybe this is the Timu version when it comes to production of Amon-Ra St. Brown. You have Drake London, and you can feel confident he's going to go out there, he's going to produce. Maybe not at the same level as Amon-Ra St. Brown, but his role is pretty much locked in for a while, and he's right at that kind of second tier of wide receivers. So I'm gonna go with Drake London here at number 15.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think he's got a chance to really put together another good season. I don't think it really matters which quarterback he's gonna have thrown to him. I think they're both similar in that they're gonna target their number one guy and they're gonna lock in and key on them. So I think Drake London at 15, yeah, I think that's a really good pick. 16, I think what we can do here, I know we talked about top 15. I think if we go quick, we could just get through the second round. I think that'd be
I
a
I
good
think
way
it's
to.
wonderful.
Yeah, so I will just quickly go with number 16. I'll go Caleb Williams. We just talked about him a little bit ago. Yeah, he's been going a lot earlier than this. I don't feel I wouldn't feel comfortable taking him in the first round. I think that's where I've seen him go a lot of times. I need to see him be a little more consistent in his play. There were times last year where it's like, man, what happened the first couple quarters? And then at third and fourth quarter, he would go crazy after that, and the overall numbers will look fine. So yeah, we need to see him be more consistent, but he's got the receivers on. He's got the receivers at hand to make that happen, and Colston Loveland emerging as a top tier player. So yeah, definitely exciting type of player to watch this year. So I'll go with him at number 16.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we didn't put him here, somebody else would have already taken him. So maybe that's just our problem that we're putting him a little too late. When you got Ben Johnson running the offense, and you have those receiving weapons of Byrne, Odunze, Loveland. You still got Swift, and you saw him take that step that people wanted him to take, and now we're projecting, well, what's another year under Ben Johnson going to look like? The future looks pretty bright. It really does. And for people that bought in the early first round, you're having to lock in the idea that that's absolutely going to happen. Um, and I guess I wasn't as impressed last year. Sounds like you weren't really either. That maybe the stats he puts up in the box score aren't fully reflected in his play throughout the game. But if you want an elite quarterback that's going to have value in a great situation, yeah, if you don't start taking them soon, somebody else is going to, and then you're going to be looking at guys you won't be as happy with. Um, So moving on to the next pick, number 17, I'm going to go with Omarion Hampton. I'm going with the running back theme here. Um, he's been talked about all off season. I won't spend a whole ton of time here. Mike McDaniel's, he's got that role locked in. Go try and trade for him. You know, no, but nobody really wants to give you Omarion Hampton at this point, because the secret is long out of the bag. Has a good draft capital, good situation. He's got, good quarterback Justin Herbert, draw attention away from him. Um, we just got to hope that the injury that we saw last year, that isn't something that somehow replicates itself, that this is a problem with him, but it wasn't when he was in college. So once again, quarterbacks are going, running backs are going. You're either in or you're out, and he's a player you can feel good about, and that for at least the short term is going to hold a lot of value because he's a good dynasty asset and he is also a good win now asset.
For sure, yeah. One of the most hyped up players this offseason, and rightfully so. The situation is looking really good. The talent, first round talent. So yeah, it should be exciting to see what he can put together this season for sure. So number 18, I'm gonna go with the second tight end since this is tight end premium. If it wasn't, I wouldn't have him here yet. But since it is tight end premium rankings, I'm gonna go with Trey McBride at number 18. I think this is about where you should take him. I think are we expecting the massive catch volume this year? Maybe not. But even so, if it slightly drops off a little, it's still going to be really strong in tight end premium. And you got, the same situation. You got Brissett back at quarterback. You got the same receivers that you played with last year. Jeremiah Love that can make it even better for this offense. So I think Trey McBride, the target share at the tight end position, it doesn't get much better than that. So I would say Trey McBride, number 18.
Yeah, I have Trey McBride in a couple leagues. And when I think back what you said to an episode, a handful of episodes back, are we drafting him at his ceiling? Kind of feels like that might be the case. But once again, Arizona is not looking great. And you can see what he's capable of when he's targeted, and he's one of the two only true elite assets at the position. We're hoping Warren and Loveland take that step, but until proven otherwise, there's only two, and it's Bowers and McBride. And in a tight end premium league, yeah, no, someone's gonna build their focus around this and say, I gotta grab him because he's not gonna be around in the next round. Um, so at number 18, I have no problem with that. At number 19, kind of going with the theme that you have. You can't forget about the quarterbacks, and we're slowly running out of quarterbacks. You can say that could they, in a best case scenario, could they put up an MVP season where it's just about stats? Um, and when I think about that, and a team that has a poor defense and the quarterback has shown he can be elite and he has the elite targets to throw to, it's just a question of health. And his seasons tend to, he has an injury, then he comes back next year and he plays well. He's kind of like Dak Prescott in that sense. But he's younger, and I'm going to go with Joe Burrow here at number 19. Because if you're able to get him here almost near the end of the second round, certainly all the mock drafts, which is based on expert consensus rankings, they have Joe Burrow a whole lot higher than this. So if you're able to get him here at the late second, um, yeah, it may not feel like a locked in player, but he's no less locked in than Jaden Daniels. I guess Jaden Daniels has the rushing upside, but he also doesn't have Jamar Chase. So when you're surrounded by as much talent as Joe Burrow has, and he's also displayed the ability to produce at an elite level, Joe Burrow is one of those players that can also, depending on your scoring format, he can win you a week when he puts up one of these 4 or 5 touchdown games. There's only a handful of players that can do that. So at number 19, give me Joe Burrow and that elite ceiling.
Yeah, at number 20, I am going to stick with the quarterback theme and another player who, at his best, can be an MVP player. It's going to be Patrick Mahomes. Yep, we'll see how he comes back from this injury. That's going to be the biggest question for him. but yeah, he's still an elite player. He's still an elite player in this league. Obviously, I think his numbers have kind of taken a step back recently. But I think, like you said earlier, at this point of the draft, if you're gonna take a quarterback that is in the higher tier, this is where you're gonna have to do it. If not, they're not gonna be there much longer. Patrick Mahomes at number 20. It may not be the most exciting pick that you ever had because you also got to see how he does coming off this injury, but he's still one of those quarterbacks that at his highest level, he can win you weeks, just like you mentioned with Joe Burrow, same situation. So Patrick Mahomes at number 20.
Yeah, no, people, it's all about what have you done for me lately, and all of a sudden he has a few MVPs, a few Super Bowls, and he's 30 years old, and nobody wants him around anymore. Yeah, it's just a question about when we've seen that offense and what is it going to look like. I'm not sure if I'm super comfortable putting him here. Maybe early third round. But I get it. If someone were to take him here, am I really going to complain about a handful of spots, especially when we know when we're looking at Hall of Fame players, that tend to be players that are going to be good players to have on your team, and he's only 30 years old. So if you're patient and you want to play the long game and you want to have someone you can slot into your starting lineup for the next, 7 to 10 years, it seems like Pat Mahomes might be the guy. At number 21, I'm going to go with an exciting young wide receiver here. Um, Tends to be at least the next play. This tends to be the space in the second round that he's coming out of. I'm going to go with Ted McMillan. And maybe, part of me feels like his rookie year, it was good, but it wasn't like astoundingly great. He had 122 targets, 70 receptions, a little over 1,000 yards, and 1,000 yards is not what it used to be. And he still has Bryce Young throwing him the ball. This is more about, okay, you're playing the long game here. I definitely think an argument could be made to take Egbuka over Tet McMillan, because it just seems to me like Egbuka is prime maybe more to have a better year this year, which will influence his value in the next year, because that's what we're going to be reflecting on after the year is over. But McMillan, I would just go with him. So either him or Egbuka. I'm picking McMillan here. I think it would be splitting hairs to go one way or the other. I tend to see McMillan go this early in startups, and Egbuka is the guy you have to wait on. But for our sake, the 21, I'm going to take Ted McMillan. It's a solid pick. It's not a question. You see room for the growth, and he developed throughout the year. It's not his fault that Bryce Young is his quarterback.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is about where Ted McMillan's been going in most drafts I see, towards the end of the second round. That's where he settled in. Prototypical, receiver that could be a number one receiver on your team, alpha type prototypical receiver. They got the size. They plan to use him more in the slot this year, which is going to help his target share. That could be a big thing for him because I've been reading Chris Brazel has been looking pretty good there in the offseason program, so they may be able to use him outside more and kind of free up Ted McMillan for some of those freebie targets, over the middle. So that should be cool to see. So number 22, I'm going to go with Devon Achane. Yeah, I think this is about where we're seeing him now. He's dropped, as the offseason has carried on. He has dropped in rankings, but I still think he's a second round player. And I think here towards the end of the second round, number 22, I think Devon Achane is a good value. 24 years old. The situation, though, as we mentioned time and time again, is about as poor as it can be. It's a very, very poor situation, but he hasn't been in amazing situations his whole career, really. A couple years he has, but this last year, nope, terrible situation, and this year another one. So I'll bet on him being a player who can overcome, maybe not as much as he did in his first 2 years, but I think he can overcome the situation and still return second round value in a draft like this.
Yeah, and it's it's all about where you're projected to go and what is your value on the market. No one is saying Devon Achan is some awful player. It's just, is he worthy of first round startup value? No. When you're all of a sudden maybe getting him in the third round, then it starts to make a lot more sense because you realize that what's going to happen in the next year, yeah, it might not do a lot of great things for his value, but you're buying him at a discount. All of a sudden, when you're getting him here at the end of the second round, the value is baked into that situation, or the situation is baked into the value, however we want to phrase it. Um, and you're right, his situation hasn't been good. Maybe he'll surprise a lot of people. Um, but he's got the right age, the right production history, and I would tend to think, after this year, Miami's only going to improve from here on out, and he's
Yeah,
not stuck in Miami forever.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah, I just want to say real quick. So we're talking about a situation how poor it's been. I mean, this is a guy that's still coming off 1,350 yards, 8 touchdowns, and he has 67 receptions in a poor situation. So am I saying he's going to match those numbers this year? I'm not saying that, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that he still has a strong RB1 season. I mean, he put those numbers together in a really deflated situation last year.
he did dual threat running back. Yeah, no, I mean there's not many who can say they are the true. There isn't a 1A, 1B. There is no 1B in Miami. It's just Devon Achane
Yeah.
or ETN. I'll never get around to. You can't do that. You can't have me call you one thing for like 3 years and then be all of a sudden like, yeah, it's not Weapon X. It's Weapon C. I just pronounce X as the letter C. Like you can't do that. You can't just change how it's a whole different name. But that's besides the point. All right. At number 23, I'm going to use the same logic here because I'm imagining if this was a startup, people would see the quarterbacks going in round two. And you had said that earlier. And the last of kind of the hyped quarterbacks, maybe I could make an argument, maybe just one more. But this one with Mike McDaniels, give me Justin Herbert. I mean, he's had already 2 seasons. Granted, they were, 5 years ago, 4 and 5 years ago, where he had 5,000 yards, 4,700 yards. You put that offensive mind in here. It just seems, I mean, it's not hard to imagine. It's just a question of unlocking the talent. And question of how good is this team's defense going to be? Because if their defense isn't elite, man, the the ceiling is very, very high. But I'm banking on the offensive mind of Mike McDaniel being able to unlock something closer to certainly north of 4,000 yards, 30 plus touchdowns, something that resembles more of his like rookie year. Because it would be hard to gamble and say, oh yeah, he's guaranteed for 5,000 yards. I mean, you can't really say that for anybody, not even in a 17 game season. But I'm thinking we're banking on the more of the certainly a top quarterback 6 season from him. Could he end up as the QB1? Probably not, because he doesn't really have the elite rushing upside. But could he end up having a type of year that's, say, like a Joe Burrow type elite year? Absolutely. I think he's right in that ballpark. He just doesn't have Jamar Chase. So that's that's the number one thing that hurts him. But here at the end of the second round at number 23, yeah, I think you got to get a cornerstone like Justin Herbert in a super flex and be happy with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no issue with that pick at all. And, I'm going to piggyback there. Pick 24 here. I'm going to go with another quarterback. It's going to be Jalen Hurts to round out the second round here in this first 2 round, ranking here. Yeah, Jalen Hurts, a down season for the whole entire offense in Philadelphia. He still put up 33 total touchdowns. And it is fantasy football. Touchdowns are going to get you the most points. And he's going to do that. His rushing touchdown, everyone knows the tush push and what the Eagles do. That's not going to stop. I mean, they have a new offensive coordinator coming in, but why would you stop something that is really, really hard to stop? It just is. It's a play that has worked so well for Philadelphia the last several years. I don't see it slowing down. He is a guy that's almost a shoe-in to get close to double-digit rushing touchdowns. And then if he can give you 25 to 30 passing, now you're looking at a top 5 quarterback, and you're going to get that guy at the end of the second round. 27 years old. Got Mekhi Lemon coming in. Stowers, a nice, promising tight end coming in for a couple years from now, could be producing. And Jalen Hurts he's just a quarterback that you have the floor. The passing obviously was not there last year, but he's shown previous seasons that he can put up good passing numbers. And I think with Jalen Hurts at the end of the second round in a super flex, yeah, you got a top 5 potential quarterback on your roster.
Yeah, you gotta take him. I mean, he's not flashy, but putting up 30 plus touchdowns every year. I don't care how you get him, whether it's on the ground or through the air. And then in an offensive situation that should be improving. Um, yeah, no, he doesn't necessarily in the fantasy community. I think we've gotten used to him being so solid, having the good floor, that he just doesn't get the respect he deserves because he's not putting up flashy passing numbers. And yeah, the tush push is maybe it's not a fun play to watch. But when it comes to your team and a solid solid quarterback one, if you've waited, he would not be a bad player to anchor your team with. So, well,
Yeah,
hey, we made it. We did it. Took a little bit over an hour, but I think that that's good. I'm excited with this. This feels like it gives me, um, when I go through and I'm gonna make my overall rankings, because the Fantasy Pros algorithm, where it takes our rankings and then tries to create an overall ranking for them, it's not very accurate. So if you haven't looked at yours, I'd encourage you to do that because I had to move around a lot of players to kind of get them where it made sense. Um, but yeah, no, it's been another great week. I hope people do check out our website if you want to see our individual rankings at lab52dynastyfootball.com. Feel free to leave our show a ranking on Spotify or Apple, wherever you listen to it. I'll let you close it out for the week, Weapon X, and we'll know that we'll come back next week as we've talked about, and I'll let you close it out with some of that info. We're gonna try to focus a little bit more on redraft because Dynasty, I don't want to say it gets put on hold, but it sort of does. Now, we've put in the work. Now it's time to see the production. But I hope everybody has a good week, and I'll let you close it out.
Yeah, awesome week. It's really cool to do these rankings. Yeah, as we get, next time we do the show, it's going to be August. It's going to be August. It's going to be full swing training camp, getting close to preseason games. And like you mentioned, at this point in the year, a lot of people are pivoting and doing their drafts, redrafts, and all that. Obviously, as the season starts, there's going to be many topics to talk about with Dynasty and, players that are stepping up and underperforming, all that. It's ebbs and flows of fantasy football. But when we get to the season, everyone has the goal to try to win and try to compete and make a run at the playoffs. And so in this next month here in August, we're gonna pivot a little bit here and just talk about 2026 season and what we can expect and the players that you want to be having on your roster and try to start every week. But yeah, it was a great show, Tecmo. Enjoyed doing these rankings, and yeah, hopefully we can just continue to keep pushing forward till we get to the season. All right, everyone, take care and have a great week.